The authentic spiritual journey demands a courageous deep dive into the silent sanctuary of the inner self, a deliberate withdrawal from the chaotic din of the external world and the clamor of the ego to seek the foundational truth of our being and the intrinsic, veiled presence of the divine within. This inward turn is not an act of escapism, but a foundational act of rigorous spiritual self-examination, where we consciously confront and systematically dismantle the layers of attachment, illusion, and fear that obstruct our perception of eternal reality, mirroring the dedication of the great mystics who understood that true wisdom flows only from the wellspring of an honest and purified soul. To undertake this dive is to commit to a sustained practice of stillness and ruthless honesty, clearing the mental and emotional ground so that the seeds of grace and wisdom can take root. Recognizing that the strength and clarity gained in this sacred solitude form the indispensable bedrock upon which the entire edifice of a genuine and effective practical spirituality must be built, transforming the individual into a vessel prepared to receive and reflect the transcendent light into the world. This profound internal realization must immediately be translated into the active, ethical commitment of practical spirituality, recognizing that insights gained in deep contemplation are incomplete and ultimately inert unless rigorously integrated into the challenging, chaotic, and beautiful landscape of daily existence, transforming the way we live, act, and relate to every soul we encounter. The ultimate measure of a spiritual conviction lies not in the fervor of its belief, but in the manifest quality of its action, where faith must express itself concretely as universal compassion, selfless service, and an unwavering commitment to justice, demonstrating that the love found within is a dynamic, outgoing force, not a passive theoretical concept confined to sacred texts or isolated retreats. This practical embodiment demands continuous discipline, transforming every mundane chore and every difficult interaction into a sacred opportunity to practice the presence of the divine, viewing the world not as an obstacle to holiness, but as the very arena, the crucible, where holiness is tested, forged, and proved authentic, ensuring that the fruits of our inner journey are made available to alleviate the suffering of the world. The first indispensable pillar of this practical spirituality is the cultivation of radical, expansive compassion, which transcends mere pity to become an active, empathetic resonance with the pain and imperfection of all beings, compelling us toward tangible acts of relief and reconciliation, viewing all humanity, regardless of belief or background, as interconnected parts of a single divine body. This deep-seated love necessitates a relentless practice of forgiveness, a profound letting go of bitterness and grievance, both for others and for ourselves, understanding that holding on to past wrongs is a spiritual poison that blocks the flow of grace and prevents us from seeing the inherent dignity and divine spark that remains, however obscured, within every person. By consciously choosing love and forgiveness, even when faced with profound adversity or injustice, we align our will with the higher, transcendent law of the universe, transforming moments of potential conflict into opportunities for profound healing and demonstrating the living, transformative power released by the deep dive into the selfless nature of the soul. The sustained inner work of the deep dive powerfully exposes the ego's illusion of control, its frantic attempts to dictate outcomes and cling to the transient, which is why the second essential pillar of practical spirituality must be a profound and active trust in the overarching providence and cosmic wisdom of the Creator, accepting that there is a divine order that surpasses our limited human capacity for understanding. This is a courageous surrender of anxiety and worry, replacing the futile striving to control every detail with a calm, centered certainty that all circumstances, whether perceived as trials or blessings, hold within them the potential for our ultimate spiritual refinement and growth, and are ultimately filtered through the lens of a loving source. To trust is to practice non-attachment to specific results, pouring our utmost effort and dedication into the duties of the present moment, the only moment where true spiritual work is possible, and then humbly releasing the outcome to grace, understanding that our highest purpose is not personal achievement, but becoming a humble, effective vessel for the divine will, demonstrating that true spiritual freedom is found in courageous reliance on a power greater than our own. A critical truth unveiled by the deep dive is the pervasive spiritual significance of impermanence, the understanding that all things of this material world are transient, subject to constant change, decay, and eventual dissolution. And a refusal to accept this reality is the root source of human suffering and attachment. Practical spirituality demands the integration of this reality into our daily outlook, not to induce detachment or pessimism, but to infuse every moment of life with heightened gratitude and presence, cherishing the beauty and complexity of existence, knowing it is fleeting, and inspiring us to invest our energy and resources not in the accumulation of perishable goods, but in the pursuit of eternal virtues and in selfless service to the well-being of others. By accepting the constantly shifting nature of life with grace and humility, we develop a powerful, unshakable inner stability that is immune to the external chaos of the world, thereby proving the mature, grounded fruit of a spiritual life that has transcended fear and embraced the reality of eternal principles. The maturity gained in the inward path requires a commitment to community, understanding that while the initial search is solitary, the continued deepening and testing of the spiritual life are best conducted in concert with others who share a dedication to truth, love, and service, forming a sacred fellowship where virtues are practiced, challenged, and strengthened in the friction of genuine human interaction. Practical spirituality mandates the conscious effort to participate in and sustain spiritually vibrant communities, where the virtues cultivated in isolation, humility, patience, and non-judgment can be tested against real-world difficulty, providing a crucible that tempers and refines character, and offering the necessary corrective perspective of others to safeguard against the subtle, dangerous pitfalls of spiritual pride or self-delusion. This communal aspect transforms the spiritual journey from a private ascent into a shared endeavor, making the assembly of the faithful a dynamic laboratory where the principles of divine love are put into collective, synergistic practice, reinforcing the core teaching that we are all interconnected and essential parts of a greater, single whole. A necessary and often challenging realization unearthed by the deep dive is the profound spiritual and moral imperative of justice and ethical action, confirming that the divine mandate extends beyond personal piety and requires an active, informed participation in alleviating systemic suffering and oppression. For a true spiritual awakening necessitates a comprehensive moral and social awakening. Practical spirituality requires the spiritual aspirant to move beyond the sanctuary and into the marketplace, utilizing their clarity, strength, and compassion to advocate for the voiceless, to challenge structures that perpetuate inequality, and to dedicate themselves to the arduous, necessary work of repairing the world. Recognizing that a passive silence in the face of injustice is a violation of the fundamental spiritual principle of universal brotherhood. Our engagement with the world's suffering must be guided by a purified conscience, fueled by prayer, and executed with wisdom, ensuring that our zeal is tempered by humility and our actions are nonviolent, making the active struggle for a more just and loving world the ultimate living testament to the depth and authenticity of our inner spiritual commitment. The ultimate integrated fruit of the deep dive in practical spirituality is the achievement of continuous awareness, an unceasing, effortless recollection of the divine presence that permeates every aspect of existence, transforming the ordinary human life into a perpetual act of worship, thereby dismantling the artificial separation between the sacred and the secular that characterizes the unawakened mind. This state is the culmination of all preceding disciplines, weaving them into a coherent tapestry of being that is resilient, graceful, and profoundly effective, transforming the individual into a living instrument of peace and a steady channel for divine grace, influencing the world not through forceful will, but through the sheer purity and focused intention of their transformed self. This profound awareness signifies the final integration of the mystical ascent with the ethical descent, creating a complete spiritual arc where deep contemplation seamlessly fuels selfless service, and service in turn deepens contemplation, proving that the greatest miracle is not the performance of the extraordinary, but the complete, sustained transformation of a fearful human heart into a radiant center of wisdom and unconditional love.